And I think one of the things that I'm most proud of, frankly, for sure, is our manufacturing quality, right? So we take really great pride in having things be robust. So we made some jokes before about, you could hammer a nail with an SM58, and that's like legitimately true, right? So we really take great pains in doing like a ton of testing to make sure that, if you're investing money in this gear, we want this gear to, it should sound great, and it does, but we also want it to last. Shure is just kind of an amazing historic company that's been in the audio industry for actually 100 years this year. This is our 100th year anniversary, which is amazing. And it's really it's a staple of the industry. Microphones, Shure is very often one of folks' very first microphones when they're starting out, whether they're performing or recording or whatever, like a good old SM58, that's very ubiquitous in the industry.
I own 10 SM57s, so it's not as though I don't have a love of microphones.
Right.
Shure makes almost indestructible gear, so I'm a huge fan.
Fantastic.
Where's the world moving now, wired or wireless?
I think it depends on what you're trying to do. So there is a value with wireless as far as how you want to move as a performer. A lot of performers are adding more integral dancing. It's a little bit harder to dance with something you're tethered to, although people who know how to work a cable is spectacular to watch. So I definitely encourage people to get that skill set. So for live performance, we see a lot more wireless. That being said, wireless comes with its own complications. So if you want like a much simpler situation, a wired mic, does it. And if you're not moving around, do you need to be wireless?
The other problem we've got with wireless is increasingly smaller spectrum space. How is Shure coping with that?
Oh, in a variety of ways, actually. So spectrum is very much at a premium these days, and I really don't know any major production that's asking for less wireless. So the way you get around that is moving digital, frankly.
How does digital help?
Digital helps because we're able to occupy much smaller bandwidth when we're talking about the frequency space. So it allows you to really pack in a lot more frequencies in a smaller amount of space. And then there's a new technology out now with our Axient PSM, which is WMAS. And what that is one carrier with multiple mixes on it. So you can have one frequency and 4 stereo mixes for your in-ear monitors, or if you're doing like an IFB, just talkback application, one frequency for 8 mono mixes. All of a sudden, your channel count really explodes in the amount of mixes that you have on air.
One of the things I've always worried about is whether quality decreases as we move to wireless. Because wired, we can carry every frequency, but wireless, perhaps not. Is that a true thought?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of a downgrade in quality when we were talking about the analog gear, because you had to compress and treat the signal in a particular way in order to get it to be transmitted from a wireless standpoint. But once we moved to digital, we're just moving ones and zeros around. So you do have like a proper audio codec and a really great encoding that you're listening to. That we can send over the air.
Before we talk about the new stuff, and I am going to get there,
Sure.
What are some of your more popular mics?
Wired or wireless?
We'll do wired.
Okay. Well, the SM58 is frankly just
Industry standard.
Industry standard. So it works on so many things, whether it's vocal or instrument as well. If you're doing drums, you have the SM91 in the kick, that's pretty common. From a vocal mic standpoint, we still see a lot of 58. The KSM9 is still very popular because this is that nice warm tone. But I'm also really seeing an uptick in the KSM-11 because it has that sparkly high end that really cuts through the mix very nicely.
Okay, flip it around, wireless.
Yep. Wireless. Couple things. I mean, we're seeing a lot more people moving to in-ear monitors, which is really fantastic, frankly. So, and I would encourage people to consider that, largely because stages are getting so loud and we're making sound as our craft, right? So one of the things you really want to do is protect your hearing, and it allows you to perform and hear what you need to hear without having to really crank the volume because you're in a much more controlled environment on your stage. So I'm definitely seeing an uptick in artists looking for those solutions over wedges. And then what's really taking off, especially for smaller scale venues, is our SLXD system. And we also have a mobile kit. So for the folks that are doing filming on the street, we have a mountable camera mount receiver, as well as a plug-on transmitter for your boom ops, as well as like lavs and such. And it's a really nice sounding digital system that isn't too pricey and easy to get into and works very well.
Well, that gets me to the exciting stuff, which is all the new announcements. What has Shure got that's new this year?
Well, newish. This is Axient Digital PSM's first NAB.
Sorry, I don't know what a PSM is.
So a PSM is your in-ear monitor system. So if you want to, listen back for cueing, listen to the rest of the band, you're going to have some sort of monitor. So the traditional way of doing that was wedges, and if you're moving wireless, you're using a PSM system. So Axient is part of our Axient family. We do have a flagship digital wireless mic, Axient, that's been out for some time that has some really great features like remote control of your portable device, so you don't have to be that person who runs out on stage and reprograms things. Nobody wants to be that person. So this technology has moved into the in-ear monitoring mix situation, as well as that digital technology that we talked about before with the WMAS and being able to really be very spectral efficient. That's coming out with the Axient PSM.
There are, I hope it doesn't come as a shock, a number of microphone manufacturers out there.
Sure.
How does one decide which mic to get? What criteria should we use?
There's a few things that you want to think of when you're choosing your own microphone, right? So what is the application? And I'm going to use a vocalist as an example. So things to think about is, how loud is my stage? Do I have a lot of rejection? Is it a quiet stage?
So we should pick mics based on the location? Partly?
Partly, yes, absolutely. So sound of stage and location are a part of it. You want to know, what sort of frequency response are you looking for? Do you need something that's a little bit warmer, or do you need something brighter that's going to cut above, a very full mix? And then polar pattern is important, and polar pattern is what the width of that pickup looks like. So, and you want to be cognizant about your mic technique as well. So if we're talking about a handheld wireless, or is it in a stand, are you good at keeping that microphone right here, or is it going to be sort of in proximity of your face, So, and then are you a loud or a quiet singer, right? So, the loud singer is a dynamic microphone, responds very well to. But if you're super quiet on a loud stage, a condenser will have a louder pickup, but that also means it picks up more of the stuff around you. So there's kind of a balance of things that you want to think about when you're choosing.
Let's flip that around. You're a filmmaker, and you're going to multiple different locations. You're principally picking up people speaking as opposed to singing. How do your criteria change?
I don't think it changes all that much. I think you end up treating the microphone a little bit differently. I imagine if it's the same speaker in multiple locations, you do want to pick something that's going to have a similar frequency response. So your speaker is going to sound the same whether they're outside or inside. It's the same collection of that voice, right? But then you're going to be talking about different accessories that you're working with. So whether it's a headset or like a lavalier, for instance, what kind of does it have a good windscreen that's working with it? I generally suggest, unless you, as a first go, especially if you're using a lavalier, an omnidirectional lav is a good way to go, just because people are going to turn their heads, and then you're going to get that kind of phasing as they move their head around, as opposed to an omni that'll have a much more consistent sound. And an omni is less prone to wind noise as well.
Omnis are less prone to wind noise?
Well, you have to still, put some treatment on it. But your overall sound is a little bit more consistent. And most lavaliers will come with some sort of windscreen. I know ours generally do. But if you're going crazy, like our twinplex lavalier comes with an entire fit kit, as if you're going to hide it for film. And there's some really cool accessories. One of my favorite ones is this little rubber piece, and you actually slide the lavalier down inside the rubber, and it has a hole in it, so you still get good sound, and then you can tape it and hide it, and it's really great for film. And then you don't get like as much rubbing on the clothing.
For people that have not yet worked with Shure gear, what are the key benefits you want them to know about?
I think one of the things that I'm most proud of, frankly, for Shure, is our manufacturing quality, right? So we take really great pride in having things be robust. So we made some jokes before about, you could hammer a nail with an SM58, and that's like legitimately true, right? So we really take great pains in doing like a ton of testing to make sure that, if you're investing money in this gear, we want this gear to, it should sound great, and it does, but we also want it to last.
Jenn, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.